Okay, I'll keep letting people in as they're in the waiting room, but I just wanted to thank all of you for being on time. We really appreciate it. Welcome to our second workshop of 2023. This workshop is going to focus more on the seasonal SEO trends, so kind of how to capitalize on seasonality throughout the year, depending on the content of your site and the kind of where you live in the world. So thank you so much for joining us again today. We have Lindsay Valdez, our VP of Audience, and she is going to take you through this slide. But as always, if you're new to our workshops, if you don't know, these are meant to be interactive. So please feel free, if you aren't comfortable coming on camera, asking a question in the chat, and I'll narrate that question to Lindsay. But if you are comfortable coming on camera, we'd love for you to just go ahead and unmute yourself at any kind of natural pauses that Lindsay takes and ask away. That's the point of this. This is here to help you navigate seasonal SEO trends. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Lauren. All right, seasonal SEO trends. Last month, we kicked off with more of a broad angle at SEO trends going into 2023. Seasonal SEO trends, to me, is even a little more exciting because it, as Lauren mentioned, merges two things together, which is editorial, capitalizing on seasonal moments throughout the year in an editorial way that speaks to your audience, while also meeting the high interest of advertisers and peak CPMs during that time. In fact, we're going to cover a few definitions of seasonal SEO in the next slide. This is the agenda. I'm just going to go through a couple of the goals, understanding what drives seasonality a little more, the top trends. We have a graph, seasonal opportunities, website optimizations, really ways to use your own website to leverage the seasonal trends, and then some tips to finish it up. Let's get started. Definitely meant to be just a discussion. This is a topic I cover all the time, one-on-one and in smaller groups with publishers. There is always opportunity to capitalize on seasonal trends, no matter what niche or vertical your site's in. But let's cover a few of the terms here. So we'll have this available if you want to look back at it. Don't feel like you need to take notes through this. We also will have the video. But seasonality in general is any predictable fluctuation or pattern that occurs during the same time each year. Now, give or take whether it's the same day or day a week or month, but you know when broadly it's going to happen. Seasonal SEO is then taking it a step further to design tactics to drive the traffic during that time period that's related to these holidays or seasonal events. Shoppable content I put in here because it's such a great way to pair shoppable and affiliate marketing strategies and affiliate revenue by bringing in to many seasonal topics. There's a shoppable component in which you're either giving a product review or making recommendations where you can seamlessly weave in purchasing opportunities for your audience. All right, evergreen content. I put that in here, content that doesn't grow old. Many people familiar with this sort of headline angle, but there is something I will talk about here that's called trending, not right here, but in this presentation called trending evergreens. And it's a strategy that's just a very interesting but related. And then seasonal content is just that content on your website that focuses on these trends that happen each year. All right. So the goal is always to, number one, to make more money, to make more ad revenue, while also using tactics in your journey, in your website journey, your brand experience, using content that can meet your audience at these key moments of their lives. What I love about this is that you gain sort of brand recognition. I know for myself, like I'll go back to the same sites for certain holiday recipes every year because I used it once, you recognize the brand. It's very common to kind of trust in that way. So you're meeting them when you know that they're going to come back year after year for those times. Brand relevancy, user experience. This is a great addition to weave into your overall digital content strategy and website presence. You want to again, be top of mind for the very relevant things that are happening in the world and in your audience, in the users' lives. Seasonal content creates great opportunity for backlinks. This is the good SEO strong, the guides, the recommendation, the best of lists, these things, people want to link to those. It's not directly related to SEO, but it is to brand. They share it on social. It's a great time to think creative on how to partner with other sites. This could be not only sister properties within your own media portfolio, if there's multiple, but also just out there with other related brands or products and partnerships that on content and even products. And then one of a key strategy in SEO is content maintenance. We talk about it all the time on letting, or more so not letting your website get outdated or grow old. So this almost forces its way into your editorial strategy. All right, I'll pause for questions for a moment. These are the goals.
You just mentioned content maintenance. Can you go into why it's so important a little bit more?
Yeah. Yes. So maintaining content on your site, and especially when it comes to like links and keeping that stuff fresh, gives two signals. One is to Google, helps them to understand that you are keeping your site updated for the user. It grows trust signals over time, that you aren't going to provide an article from multiple years back on the best gifts because things in that article might be outdated. So if you're keeping them updated, that's good. And then for users, they trust it. I think it's the worst when you go to a gift guide and click links to broken products that were there last year, sold out, after you just wanted, were interested enough to click it to maybe purchase it. That's one of the huge turnoffs for users. So this almost forces you back into fixing those things.
Cool. Thank you. I have had that happen actually, where you're like, oh, this product is great. And you might see it from an old email or something, that you were marketed to, and yeah, you click through and the content's not there. It's a bummer.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have questions on that?
All right, let's dig into what drives seasonality. So as you build your strategy, this is and much of like every single webinar Lauren and I do, we're talking broadly. These are examples. This is directional, and you would use these seasonal moments, but they need to be applied to your own vertical and your own expertise. You stay relevant above all else. So if it doesn't make sense to fit in, something, then don't. All right, but as far as how we bucket these, and I think this is broadly across any media editorial property I've ever worked on, you kind of think of things as cultural. These are more, I used the term yesterday, like federal holidays, maybe like time off, but cultural, sometimes religious related events throughout the world. And next would be commercial. Today is Valentine's Day in the United States, one of the most commercialized holidays there could possibly be, forced into celebrating love. And Black Friday, Mother's Day, things that aren't, you're not going to get the day off, but they certainly drive user interest and money, like people purchasing, so therefore advertising dollars increase. And then ad hoc, this is more the bucket of what comes along every year. Another thing that can kind of fall into this would be the seasons. So just speaking of the 4 seasons throughout a year, it is very common to see publishers target fall, winter, spring, summer, elections, Olympics, things along those lines that happen. And then what drives the tipping point is the other side, which is revenue, because advertisers really want to get in front of you, your users, during these key moments with their creative. So they're spending more to do that during this time. More competition, any time that's very tied to e-com and purchasing moments, which pretty much all holidays are, is it time for higher CPMs? So when those two meet, you really want to be there with your content. As you as a publisher, your role falls on the left here.
What kind of content comes to mind, Lindsay, when you think of these different events? Like, can you give some examples?
Yes. Can you go back one slide? Let's think of different. One thing. Oh, yes. This is great. So Valentine's Day is today. There is countless not only I'll gifts can be applied to any, so I'll quit saying that. Like, that's going to be your gift guides, that's going to be product, you can have dedicated product reviews, that's a way to take it from the best list. But there's other things like dedicated pieces on the FAQs around holidays. People would be surprised. A lot of even myself, I'll use an example for today. I have kids that are in elementary school and they had learned about St. Valentine, right? They're going to learn about these things that are why do we celebrate this? What is Lunar New Year? So those kind of FAQ pieces. I think that profiles, the like 5 things to know. There was an Olympic female snowboarder last summer that was really trending and really popular. So covering what you want to know about that athlete, these players, a March Madness that can have some trend effect on those sites to cover the actual players. And then I'll use one for elections. This was something that happened a few years ago, that 2016, I was here working at a company and we were just kind of experimenting with the top, I'll cover it right now, trending evergreens. So you have an evergreen that, like, it may never grow old, but if you can publish it right at the time of a trending moment, it can pick up. So my very short example here on elections was when in the United States, it was kind of when everyone realized it was real that President Trump was going to run for president here in the US. I had just rolled out this strategy. I come in the next morning to work, and an editor had thought to publish an article the night before, whatever it had been, on the rules about moving to Canada and leaving the United States. And it had, because all of a sudden you had a mass flux of people searching for topics in this moment of how to get out of the US. She had thought to publish some sort of, it was a serious piece on if it's really allowed or whatever, but it had trended and sent like 300, 400,000 page views over the course of that one night. So if you can think of things in the mind of your users, this happens with like award shows, Grammys. What happened? Somebody, it shows Rihanna being pregnant. That's another one from Super Bowl that was trending all of a sudden. All right, we could go forward. Those are some examples. I could clearly go all day. Next. All right, this will actually help you, publishers, take it into your own mind to start thinking of your examples. These are just examples. And I want to say this originated, or the concept was how we create tent poles to go out for direct sales approaches and pitches. And if you can go to a brand and say, you, Target, really should sponsor our back to school gift guide because we're going to focus on these products and find a partnership or an integration there, you can see a lot of success with both performance and closing those direct deals. So I won't need to go into all of these, but you can see throughout the trends go in the buckets that I spoke to before, and into the seasons, such as barbecue, I noticed was on there for July, and camping. Those are very summer, middle of summer here in the States, road trips, things along these lines. So you can use this, again, we'll send this out, but it's also important to start thinking of your own and what applies to you, your audience specifically, and how you could naturally integrate angles that they would enjoy. All right, so as we move through this, we're doing on time, doing good. So if we move through this, if we're thinking of the ways, the content side of it, there's also proactive things publishers can do to take advantage of the higher CPMs. So let's walk through those for just a minute. All right. So the 4 listed here, I really love and have seen the most success with higher overall page revenue when using these strategies. So for viewability, which is the percentage of the ad in view for the user, needs to be 70%, something like that, or the closer 70 and up. And the sooner the better. If you think about it, just in natural user behavior, the user gets to the page and they're going to read, they're going to start scrolling down. And how can you optimize your own site for what they'll see at that time? Seasonal content also gives a lot of opportunity for long form content. You have the guides, you have the deeper activity or craft related pieces that can go along with that. So for viewability, it's important to put, I'd say 3 things: short sidebars. If you're running a desktop, or everyone's running desktop, if you're running on desktop, a sidebar, and you have like 6 modules before you get to the ad that should be optimized to pin, also called a sticky unit. That could be on the list as well. Make sure that it's sticky. But so your user may not scroll all the way to the bottom. Do you need every single thing in the sidebar? And if so, should it be prioritized over your revenue in the sense of you're making money off the viewable ad? So that's one, shorten the sidebar. All of this can be done in testing in like these small seasonal periods. So it's not like you have to make these changes for the entire year, but that's part of the strategy to take advantage of your peak seasons. Another one for viewability, let's say above the fold, that's another one. They're going to land. You should have some sort of, if not banner on those pages. Oftentimes users quickly scroll, so that can hit or miss on the performance of that very top one, but certainly right away in your article, in your content, you should have some ads. So those are some few things. And keeping, let's see, flex units, that's another thing. So if you can enable an ad unit that fit is 300 by 600, there's a way to set it that it can also be filled by 300 by 250s. So 2 sizes, it can hold 2, drives up competition. These are called flex units. If you're with Freestar monetizing with us, reach out to your account team and they can help if you're not doing that. The last 2 there, reduce block lists. Sometimes these can be really strict and you have very extensive block lists on who you don't want to run on your site. During peak seasons, take a look at that. You can just optimize against it. In that time, go to what is only absolutely necessary. These are high CPMs people are willing to pay during these times. Allow for a little leeway during that and then go back to it. And test video, the 4th one.
So I have a question on video specifically, Lindsay. Can you speak to the difference in revenue that video will bring versus just standard?
Yes. So placement of video, where I really love, I mentioned before, will be at the top, getting that on video, getting a placement there. And then for it can easily make up a 4th or a 5th of a publisher's overall revenue, more so even a 4th of it during those high peak seasons. So if you're thinking in terms of what you're making right now, you can easily tack on another 5th if you're not running video during that time. The highest unit you will run on your site is likely video.
Interesting. And to Lindsay, we can talk about, I think, just a little bit about our conversation yesterday about how a lot of native ads, we were talking to our head of video here at Freestar yesterday, and a lot of native ads have video in them. And so if you're just running out on the open market, you're potentially running video anyway, almost likely you are. So it is interesting, I think, to what you just said, Lindsay, if you kind of take control of the reins on your video and add a player, you might as well start monetizing more because you're already running video, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's such a good point. All right, so CPM, let's see, site optimizations. Did I already go through the last slide? Okay. Yes, covered everything
One more.
there. Thank
Finish
you.
this
Sorry,
one.
yes.
Go one more. Yeah, there we go.
All right, so these are another step for optimizing your actual website, getting it ready before these seasonal moments. Number one, this is an all year long kind of thing. This is not an idea of which you should only like care about one specific thing. There's many years, likely throughout 12 months, that you can focus on. And then it has just as much to do with things that aren't seasonal. It's your user experience on your website. It is updating to look fresh and modern and new, and creating that. Speed is another factor, right? It isn't something you just think about during those seasonal moments. All right, and the next few are a little more proactive, specific to seasonal content. I think some of this has reminded me back to last month's webinar. I think there's some broad trends for landing page, for like the category pages and these hub pages to be optimized for search, because as we practice in a way that optimizes for what's indexed to only be your good content. And as you tighten up your editorial strategy to only be publishing things very specific to your brand, those landing pages can be a great experience for the user. If you are thinking, so this would be like a category page when you, but in certain technical setups, it might just as well be your tag pages. So you can think of it in both ways. Just a page that aggregates all this sort of same topic content together. Make sure your HTML title tags, your meta descriptions are optimized for that page. Make sure they're indexed. If someone told you along the way to no index category pages, it's not necessarily wrong, but if you're shifting and pivoting to optimize for them, you're going to want to index them, and then make sure they're filled with great quality content. All right, the next one is one I saw right away happen here when I started, and I loved it. It was an example. They had listened to something or read something that we had written, and it was a tool site. I'm like an e-com, I want to say tool site, would have most likely been a male dominated audience. This is updating the main navigation, and to include what they did was put Father's Day. I want to say that was all in the main navigation. So if you think of it, had like products, about page, all your top stuff, they put Father's Day, and it brought focus. Like I noticed it right when I landed to the page, because think of like Home Depot with all of a sudden a Father's Day in the top. You're looking to purchase, you're looking, you come to the site, you're looking for sales and deals and something maybe for that specific moment. Another one, and they had put it in the navigation. Another one, we have a partner that focuses on deal content, and I had made a recommendation to put Black Friday right in the top navigation temporarily to optimize for that spot. It also sends Google very strong signals to be in your navigation in the first place. Seasonal content module. I often say home pages are for advertisers. That is where a brand will check, and you don't want to have if you're going to work with them, you don't want to have a 2017-18 article on the homepage. So you really need to keep that updated with fresh content, and having a certain module mid-page that can be curated for a season to highlight the content within them right off the bat tells a brand or even a user that there'll be special content there. And then, as always, make sure you're checking your own site on mobile that people can get to this content, and that the speed is also why I put that there. Make sure you're just checking out your own site to see what your users experience. All right, let's get into the tips on how the process would go when you start working this in. Say you're about to you listen to this, you're going to take this to your editorial team, and you either need to understand what they've done in the past to focus on seasonality, and also their ability to move on it now and to work it into an actual process. Number one, you would need to know your audience. And this is very important, that you don't go publishing things that are going to take them that feel out of place for your site, that are going to take them by surprise. And if all of a sudden you're pushing products heavily and you never have before, your users, assuming this is integrated through your socials and newsletters, they're going to be overcome with more product information than they're used to. That could give them a bad taste in their mouth for your brand. So from there, you also want to think about what type of content normally do well for the site. So do recipes, that's an easy one for food sites, but if you realize that activities or crafts happen to do well, what a great way to integrate that in. So whatever it is that performs well, look at your organic search performance, and that's where you can start strategizing against headlines that might make sense. And then get started early. I barely ever talk about Pinterest. It almost makes me sad that I don't anymore, just because it doesn't send publishers traffic. And in 2016, 17, 18, it was one of the very most things I talked about. It was very related to SEO. That says that Pinterest and also other social areas start picking up interest for trends much earlier than you would expect. So when it gets to be that month, you are too late, basically. Start now, think about what's coming up. It's going to say what's in March, St. Patrick's Day, right? So if you were a publisher in which that could apply to you, you would need to do it now. Start looking at content now to see what performed, and work it into the process.
I was going to say, Lindsay, so Lindsay and I come from the publishing side. We worked at a publisher, and I feel like as a publisher, you almost have to live like 2 months prior. So you're like, oh, we're celebrating 4th of July in my world, but really it's April. So I remember you're kind of living ahead so that you can get ahead seasonally.
So far in advance, be end of summer and like super hot here in Phoenix, and then we'd be thinking about holiday content and Halloween, and it just never felt right. And then you're so sick of it by the time you get there. And I want to explain swarming a little bit more too. This is a term as an editorial strategy, also very similar to content clusters, in which you take the topic that does well and think of multiple angles that you can cover it in the same way. If you are about to cover, let's say you live in a very like weather seasonal place and you're about to go into spring, finding things that are related to your brand. Let's say you're a lifestyle publisher, you might get away with publishing things on like where to go, what activities do, and then you can do one-off pieces on those activities and deals, fun things to do for little kids, and just cover it in multiple angles and interlink it. It's not the same topic, but the base or pillar of that content is the same. All right. Research the trends. This changes. I use these tools are getting better, I would say. I still use Pinterest trends a lot if you have not checked that tool out, just because it's kept up a little more. Google Trends is, I would say, it's like less useful to publishers. It's more like what's trending in like hard news sometimes versus the seasonally relevant Pinterest trends. And of course it doesn't, just use it for your articles. It's not, you don't need to think of it as related to Pinterest. They're just pulling in collective trends. And in fact, they just published this week some incredible trends that users are seeing in new things like caring where their information's coming from, sustainability, quality in products, these big ideas that you can incorporate even into the seasonal aspect. You can also look at your competitor sites. search results just by searching is a great way to understand. Because even if you have, there's new stuff every year too. So you want to freshen it up. And that's, let's see, that is number 4 really there, is looking to see what did well last year, updating it, keeping it fresh, updating the links well in advance, a few months before. That way Google can crawl it, Google can kind of reassess the quality of it, see what changes have been made before, gives you enough time to like gain traction. And then for things that did perform well, think of similar angles. For things that did not perform, you can remove, can safely take down, and just certainly don't focus on, if you think it was a quality issue, you could try to get, make it better, but otherwise just focus on what did perform well. All right, so one very important part about refreshing content is Google, you don't want to update something that's ranking very high already. So if it is in this goes year round all the time. If it is your top organic search performers, it's most likely ranking for something very high. Don't mess with it. Use tools to better understand your rankings so you don't, I also like to say, add, don't subtract is a safer method. Add, don't subtract. I very much operate on conservative with content updates, just because you don't know which way Google will go. But for the most part, in the long term, you make it better. You do better. So you don't exactly know what they have you ranking, or valuing in that piece. So just add more to it. You can add images, update the publish date. Again, this should be a couple months prior to the seasonal event happening. And then partnerships. This is such a good time. You should know the people in your space. You should know the industry. That's something I love, in fact, and have learned from in my time here at Freestar, is that even those that do similar things to us in the industry, I watch our own execs and leaders they know each other. It's an industry in which you know each other, and there may be opportunity. There's ways to cross promote. There's ideas and collaborations that can happen. And using seasonal moments to release this content maximizes all of it, like the interest, the brand relevancy, the high CPMs, all in one place with the seasonal happening. All right.
Lindsay, can you, before we move on from that last slide, sorry, just backing up one, can you walk us through an example of like refreshing seasonal content? You know how you were saying add, don't subtract, but what's a good example of refreshing?
Refreshing. So if you go back and you're doing summer road trips in California, and that piece did well last year, you would, in GA, you're looking out during that time period. So say we're in February, it's actually a perfect time to start looking at your content that did well over the summer. That's the season. So this content stands out to you. One thing that's important to do, I think, is adding new, quote, in this example, road trips, or whatever that list of movies is, the best summer movies. There is new, fresh stuff that happens every year. There's ways to get creative. There's another thing to find that you can add to it. I would put new content at the front. Update, I would say to do things like update the intro graph, where you're just freshening it up. There might be old references. I asked one of our account managers last week to please ask a travel site to remove certain COVID references, only because, or at least from being the very top thing for it was for revenue purposes, not for the topic that it shouldn't be there, but also follow those things, follow those trends, and understand. Sometimes you'll reference things that were trendy last year, and it feels out of place if you don't remove it. So just freshen that up, add things to the list, check the links. Is there ways to interlink your own, add internal links to fresh new content? add a video if it might apply, weave in affiliate links or a way to drive revenue there. And at the very end, update the date. And I would say it's also standard to put that at the bottom, put it, say originally published in April 2012, whatever, like publish what it originally was. So users don't, we're not trying to trick anyone. We're just trying to keep content maintained and update it through the year.
Great. All right, does anyone have any questions for Lindsay? Other than the things that she already covered. And also, I want to pose this as an opportunity to share any future workshop topics that would be really helpful to you, because likely if they're helpful to you, they'd be like helpful to others. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? You can drop it in the chat if you're not comfortable going on camera. And you can also jump in if you work here at Freestar. I see a lot of you on here. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add? No. Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you all so much. It looks like, go to the last slide. There we go. So our next workshop is going to be focused around app advertising. So we recognize that is specific to app developers. But again, if you have any topics that you'd like to hear more about, please feel free to shoot us a note. Thank you so much for joining today. And Lindsay, amazing job. So helpful as always. Lindsay, did you have anything else that you'd like to say besides Happy Valentine's Day?
Yep, happy Valentine's Day. This was a blast. Thank you all, and happy to answer any questions you have anytime. Thank you.